No matter the pressure put on Israel right now, Israel needs to finish eliminating Hamas. These are the words of son of Hamas co-founder Mosab Hassan Yousef. He's waded in again into the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas and the wider region. And he's given some important new takes on the ongoing conflict, which I think are so critical and need to be heard right now. I mean, Mossab is such a moral hero. He grew up being spoon-fed the hatred of Hamas, and yet he heard the voice of his inner moral conscience and the voice of decency and the truth. And he ended up supporting Israel. But here's what he said. So he said, first of all, this is just a few days ago on X, he said, there is no authority above this. Israel has the right to strike Hamas wherever and whenever without hesitation. Hiding among civilians doesn't give Hamas any immunity. Obviously, if you said, oh, if you hide behind civilians, we're not going to fight you, then they're just going to continue to do that. It's only when you say, I'm not going to stop fighting you when you take human shields, that they're not incentivized to use human shields. You know, I don't understand the logic of saying, oh, you can't do it because they're hiding behind civilians. Then all terrorists and all evil people will do that the whole time. You end up harming more people that way. When Arabs fight other Arab countries, they don't use human shields because they know it's not going to pay. It's not going to make a difference. It is the height of immorality to pander to that. Then he says Palestinians and Muslims need to stop exaggerating and lying about the number of civilian casualties to gain sympathy and condemn Israel. Not that I think that will happen, but of course that's part of the strategy. That's put us, Hamas knew what was going to happen. They knew Israel would have to retaliate, and he knew the world was going to get fed up pretty quickly. It's all part of their strategy. The same with the hostages as well. They're trying to, pull all the heartstrings of Israelis and people around the world. Human rights organizations have no credibility nor legitimacy as long as they don't condemn Hamas for operating among civilians. First and foremost, UNRWA, by the way, were found to be complicit in October 7th. So let's dispel the notion that they are somehow peacemakers. American citizens who support Hamas violate American laws and should be profiled by the FBI with no exception. That includes high-profile politicians and social media influencers. Absolutely agree. And sadly, we've seen some of them in the media. He says Egypt and Qatar must be punished for arming and funding Hamas. Palestinians should never be rewarded for their violence. And if the PA doesn't leash terrorists in the West Bank, Israel should consider expelling the Palestinian President Abbas and dismantle the PA by freezing their assets. And he then says a Palestinian state is off the table for the time being. When Palestinians learn how to prioritize their children over their political and financial ambitions, we can talk. If the world doesn't want to see more civilian casualties, then they should pressure their governments to evacuate civilians into the Sinai, I think he meant to write. This will stop only when Sinwar is begging on his knees and the rest of the Hamas leaders have been eliminated. Absolutely right. The war doesn't end when, Israel returns the hostages. The primary objective of this war has to be to destroy the threat. And deals that get the hostages but release prisoners and potentially give Hamas power to do things in the future is immoral. And it's as painful and difficult as it is, it's actually incentivizing them to take more hostages in the long run. I don't understand. We used to have this principle in America we heard of, you don't negotiate with terrorists. The reason is because if you negotiate with them, you incentivize terrorism. You create a terrorism industry, a kidnapping industry. And so I pray with all my heart that all the hostages are returned and captured, but through military might and pressure and recovering them, and perhaps through forcing Hamas to surrender. But deals that could threaten Israel's security, you end up holding everyone in Israel hostage as a result of doing that. Mossab understands, and by the way, I disagree with him on the notion of creating a future Palestinian state. I think any idea of telling them that there is a legitimacy to this idea that the Jewish people don't belong in this land, that this isn't their land, that feeds into their narrative, which is about a Palestinian identity, it's not a genuine a desire for nationalism. It's only ever been about seeking to destroy the Jewish state, a cynical ploy, because they'd have to be part of the Arab world. So because of all that, I don't think we should be indulging anymore in this idea of a Palestinian state, because it hasn't worked. We've tried it for nearly a century. Basically a century. And it hasn't produced positive results. It's just fed the fantasy of killing the Jewish state and killing the Jews. But what Mossab does understand is that Israel, the only way she can defeat her enemies is through a show of strength. Not compromise, not appeasement, not trying to wish that if you just give a nice gesture, then somehow things will be all right. Israel traded Gilad Shalit for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. One of them was Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar, who was the orchestrator of the October 7th attacks and is now the leader of Hamas. Israel gave away Gaza as a gesture, an appeasement. And what did she get in return? So Mossab, and if you speak to people who actually understand the Arab world, they understand two things. Number one, that the only language that region understands is strength. Not negotiation, not appeasement. All that does is show weakness to them and incentivizes them to do even more, to go further. That's number one. And number two is the only thing that they respect. It's people who invoke the name of God. And so that's another element to this. I do believe that the region Israel's in it really calls upon us, the Jewish people, to fully come into our role that we were charged with thousands of years ago. Not to be like the other nations. I think part of the frustration that people in Israel activism feel is they want the nations of the world to treat us like everyone else. They say, look at all these double standards, stop trying to treat us differently. And we lament that. But actually, the reason why it's not working is because the nations sense that we are different. And so instead of saying, no, we're not different, we should tell them why we are actually different, demystify who the Jewish people are, what it is that we've already contributed to the world, and fully come into that role, invoking the name of God in what we do and godliness, and saying that we are a nation that was charged by God to be his voice to the world. That's actually something that they might respect in that region. And I actually do believe that that is going to be part of the key to ending this conflict, which is inevitable. In the end, sooner or later, Jews and Arabs are going to become the best of friends, united together in serving God.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.